Hi guys, welcome back. In this video, we're going to discuss the MCQ solution for Igcse O-Level Economics May June 2026, paper 12, the exam that you recently gave. Now, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. And now, let's get started. What the first question says, what is an example of a free good? Headphones given away with new mobile phone? No. Machines bought with 0% bank interest loan? No. Sunshine that powers a solar energy farm? Yes, this should be the answer. Why? Because a free good is a good that doesn't really require the factors of production or scarce resources to produce them. Sunshine is naturally available and does not need to be produced, so there is no opportunity cost of production as well. You aren't really sacrificing anything while producing sunshine, and you aren't really using any factors of production to produce it either. The rest of the answer options are purely incorrect. Question number 2, what is the reward for the factor of production? Capital. Very simple. I'm sure all of you guys must have done this correct. The correct answer is interest. We know that capital is a man-made resource used in production, such as factories, tools, and machineries, and the reward for capital is interest. Question number 3, the diagram shows the choices for an individual between leisure and earnings. So on the vertical axis, you have hours of leisure per day. On the horizontal axis, you have the earnings. A person decides to take a job that gives more leisure time. What is the opportunity cost of moving from position Y to position X? So if you're moving from Y to X, your hours of leisure are going up and your earnings are slightly going down. So basically the thing is that at position Y, you're earning $80 and 8 hours of leisure, and at X it's $60 dollars being earned with 12 hours of leisure. So moving from Y to X is actually giving you, you can say 4 extra hours of leisure, but your earnings are falling, right? So the opportunity cost of what is given up is, what is given up, right? So, I mean, you're giving up what? You're giving up $20 worth of earnings. So the correct answer has to be A for alpha. Question number 4 says, what would be classified by an economist as a macroeconomic aim? A government increasing the unit tax on petrol? No, that's no. So question number 4, the correct answer has to be B for boy, because macroeconomy is about the whole economy, right? So inflation is a macroeconomic issue, and a central bank targeting 2% inflation is therefore a macroeconomic aim of the government, of the government, right? Now, the rest of the answer options are obviously incorrect. Question number 5, on the diagram, D1, S1 are the original demand and supply curves for T in a country. We know that demand is rising. What would cause the demand curve to shift from D1 to D2 to the right? Basically, demand is increasing. Now, the thing is, the correct answer has to be C for Charlie, an increase in the price of substitutes, because coffee and tea are substitutes, right? So if coffee becomes more expensive because its price is rising, so the price of coffee goes up, the demand for tea would go up because people would switch from coffee to tea, so demand for tea will rise. So the correct answer has to be C for Charlie. Question number 6. The diagram shows the supply curve for a good. You have an upward sloping supply curve. What would cause an extension in the supply of a good? The correct answer has to be D for David, because an extension in supply means movement up along the same curve, and this happens when the price of the good is rising, so you have an increase in quantity supplied, movement along the same curve. Pretty simple. Non-price factors shift the curve. Anyways, question number 7, elasticity calculation question. The question says, the elasticity of demand for cigarettes is estimated to be minus 0.5. The government introduces a tax on cigarettes to reduce consumption. By how much must the price of cigarettes rise to reduce the consumption by 10%? Now, so basically, if you apply the PED formula, which is like the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. So let's keep percentage change in price as a value we need to find. The PED is already given to you 0.5. The percentage change in quantity demanded is given to you as 10%. So you can find the value of X. So if you find the value of X, what you need to do is that you need to divide 10 by 0.5, and if you divide 10 by 0.5, let me do the math, the answer is basically 20. So 20 here is basically representing the percentage change in price. So if 20 is the percentage change in price, which means that the answer should be D for David, because it says by how much must the price of cigarettes rise to reduce consumption. The cigarettes price should go up by 20%. That's why that's the correct answer, to reduce the consumption by 10%. Question number 8 says which type of a good does not cause market failure. The correct answer has to be pretty simple question. It says it does not cause a market failure. So the correct answer is B for boy. Why? Because free goods do not cause market failure, because free goods are not scarce and they have no opportunity cost either, right? And that's what a free good is. But the reason why we're saying they don't cause a market failure is because market failure means when you have a market for something, you have demand and supply. You have supply by the producer at a certain price, you have demand by the consumer at a certain price, and then when we say that markets are failing, it means that the socially efficient level of production or consumption isn't really happening. But that doesn't really apply to free goods, because you don't really have a tradable market, or a market where goods and services, or a market where free goods are actually bought and sold, right? So since there's no market in the first place, there's no market failure either. So that's why 8 boy is the correct answer. Question number 9 shows the market. The diagram shows the market for essential medicine. You have two prices. The government has intervened to decrease the maximum price of medicine from P1 to P2. So you already have a maximum price below the equilibrium, and now that price is actually going down. So what is the impact of the decrease in maximum price on the market for this medicine? Now we know that a maximum price that is below the equilibrium would make the medicines cheaper, right? At P2. So at lower prices, consumers would demand more, so quantity demanded would increase. So the correct answer has to be C for Charlie, an increase in quantity demanded, because consumers would now find it more cheaper. Question number 10 says a kilogram of rice was priced at $0.5 in 1 year, but the price increased to $0.75 for a kilogram in the following year. Which function of money does this statement demonstrates? Does it demonstrate deferred payment? No, this is wrong, because deferred payment means paying later. C is wrong as well, because C just refers to about holding the value of money over time. So that's incorrect as per the statement. The correct answer has to be for boy, unit of account, because money is being used to measure and compare the price of rice over 2 years, and that is exactly what the unit of account function is, right? Question 11 says the diagram shows a worker's total income and deductions made. The worker decided to save 10% of his disposable income. Which sum did the worker save? So first we need to calculate the disposable income. So the disposable income would be, let's say, annual wage would be part of disposable income. Overtime pay, this is part of disposable income. So this is part of total income, not disposable income. These are total income. So these are your total incomes. Total income is basically 20K, right? And you deduct your direct tax from it, right? You deduct your direct tax, and your direct tax is like what, 5K? So this you're left with 15K. So this is like your disposable income. And then not exactly total disposable income, because you have other deductions from salary being made as well. So you deduct other deductions from salary apart from income tax, because these are all your legal deductions being made. So now you have like what, 12K as your answer. So the correct answer has to be so this is 12K is basically your disposable income, right? Not the answer, my bad. This is your disposable income. So this is your disposable income. It says you save 10% of your disposable income. So 12,000 times 10%, which is 1,200, would be the answer. So C for Charlie is the correct answer. Question number 12, a lawyer is considering becoming a teacher. What is a non-wage factor that might influence this decision? Now, the correct answer for this would be the amount of holidays in each occupation should be the answer. So A would be the answer, because non-wage factors are those factors other than money that actually affect a job's choice, right? So these would include things like working conditions, job satisfaction, promotion opportunities, or fringe benefits, holidays. So A would be the answer. Holidays like fringe benefits and all of that. So the amount of holidays is actually a very classic non-wage factor example given in the textbooks. Question 13 says the table gives labor productivity index, real GDP per hour worked, because labor productivity is simply real GDP per hour worked. Now they've actually what they have done is that index, you see the index is basically a number, and it is it's a statistical number, and we use an index in order to reduce the complications of our calculations. So because we have like whole numbers, these numbers are huge, like, maybe 1 6 3 7 8 9 4 3 5, and I don't know, it might go on and on. So these difficult long calculations, in order to do them, simplify them, we sort of reduce their complexity by converting these long numbers into index numbers, right? So this makes our life easy, simply. So labor productivity is given in index number. What is most likely to have caused the changes in labor productivity over the period? So now, if you see the indexes, labor productivity index is going up, which means, what do you mean? What exactly is labor productivity? Labor productivity is simply telling us output per worker, or you could say, or it's simply output as per the question. It's output per hour worked is rising. So output per worker is rising, or output per hour worked is rising. So a more skilled workforce, basically. So the correct answer has to be for boy, because a more skilled workforce can actually produce more output in the same amount of time, which will obviously increase your productivity. That's what makes boy the correct answer. Question 15. The table shows the units of factors of production that a firm needs to employ for two different levels of output. Land, labor, capital is given. And then you have the output given. What is the firm experiencing? Again, a good question. We know that the output doubles from 100 to 200, and land rises from 6 to 9, 8 to 12, 4 to 6. So if you look at all these inputs, if you calculate these percentage changes, you jump from 6 to 9, that's like a 3 upon 6 times 100 is 4 upon 8 times 100, 2 upon 4. So this is all 50%. So all the inputs actually I'll tell you something. So all the inputs are actually rising by 50%. So all inputs are going up by 50%, while your output is more than doubling, that is, it's going up by 100%, which is a classic example of economies of scale, right? Because it means that a firm is getting more. Actually, this means is that a firm is getting a more than proportional increase in output from a proportional increase in input. The firm is increasing inputs proportionally by 50%, but while the output increases by 100%. Classic example. This is an evidence that the economy is experiencing that the firm is experiencing economies of scale. Question 15. The firm has the following set of costs at different levels of competition. So you have different outputs, total fixed cost, total variable cost. They're asking at which level of output is the average total cost the lowest. This is a pretty repeated question. So all you need to do is you need to calculate total cost, which would be like the sum of fixed cost and variable cost, this would be like 700, 1,000, 1,200. This would be 2,000, and the lowest would be what? The lowest would be and then you need to find out the average total cost. So average total cost is simply total cost divided by your output. So 700 divided by 10, 1,000 divided by 20, 1,000 divided by 20 would give you, this is 50, and this is 1,200 divided by 30 would give you 40, and this should be 2,000 divided by 40. So this should give you 50. So the correct answer has to, so the lowest level of output, so this is like 70, 50, 40, 50, which is actually 40. So 40 is the lowest average total cost, and it is coming at an output of 30. So correct answer has to be C for Charlie. Question 15, C. Question 16, what may exist in a competitive market but not in a monopoly? Again, a very simple question. The correct answer is A for alpha, many sellers. We know that a competitive market usually has a lot of sellers, and a monopoly is just a one dominant seller, or simply one firm controlling the entire market. Question number 17. What is an international role of the government to improve health standards through an efficient healthcare system? This shouldn't be the answer, because healthcare is a domestic role. C would be incorrect as well, because redistributing income through taxation is a domestic role of the government to reduce income inequality. Question D is incorrect. To increase productivity levels by spending on education, again incorrect, because this is also mainly domestic. So the correct answer has to be B for boy, to support export-oriented firms by negotiating free trade deals, which is correct, because you see, an international role of the government involves relationships with other countries, right? So negotiating these free trade deals is international, because it involves trade agreements between different countries. Question 18 says, for example, like the prime minister or the head of state of your country visiting other countries to secure trade deals. Okay. Question 18. A government aims to reduce the rate of inflation. Which measure to help the unemployed is most likely to conflict with this aim? So, giving grants for travel to overcome high transport costs, this would be wrong, because travel grants would actually improve mobility and it would help people find work without strongly increasing inflation as well, because the output in that country would be increasing. So the inflation wouldn't really be going up. So this is incorrect. Uh, while option B says B is wrong as well, because training raises productivity and can help reduce the cost pressures. So this wouldn't really, it will reduce cost push inflation. This is incorrect. C, providing information, this is incorrect as well, because job vacancy information would help reduce the unemployment by improving labor mobility. The correct answer has to come from David. D, because if the government raises the benefits, unemployed people will have more income to spend, and this can increase total demand in the economy. So if demand would increase too much, it will increase inflation. So this can conflict with the aim of reducing inflation, right? So if you're helping to people to, if you're the measure to help the unemployed would sort of conflict here, because it will just cause inflation. Question number 19 says, in an economy, lower income earners pay income tax rate at a rate of 20%, while high income earners pay income tax rate at 45%. Which classification of taxation is in operation? Interesting question. The correct answer has to be for boy, progressive, because progressive taxation means higher income earners would pay a higher percentage or proportion of their income in tax. So the tax burden always falls more on upper income groups, while the lower income earners are only paying 20%, while higher income earners are paying 45%. This is a classic progressive tax example. Question 20, what is an example of monetary policy? Now, monetary policy would involve controlling money supply and interest rates. So increasing interest rates is a monetary policy measure implemented by the central bank. Now, moving on to question number 21, which says a government increases spending on education and training to raise international competitiveness. What is likely to decrease? Now, education, a current account deficit seems possible. Real GDP is wrong, because real GDP is likely to increase, not decrease. HDI value is more likely to improve here. Productivity of labor is likely to increase. So the correct answer is A, and it is A, because education and training can actually make workers more productive, and this may help the work firms to actually produce better quality goods at a much lower cost. So exports may rise, and exports may rise, imports may fall. So the current account deficit would actually reduce. Question number 22 says the table shows figures for real GDP of a country in a particular year. You have quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4. A quarter is 3 months, at the end of which quarter had the economy experienced a recession. So, see, you have to understand that a recession means when your real GDP falls for 2 consecutive quarters, or for consecutive 6 months, right? So real GDP falls from quarter 2 to quarter 3. It goes from 101 to 99. Then again, from quarter 3 to quarter 4, that is from 99 to 98. So by the end of quarter 4, the economy has now experienced a recession. So the question says, at the end of which quarter had the economy experienced a recession? So the correct answer has to be D for David. Question number 23 says the table shows selected indicators for the labor market. Employed, self-employed, unemployed, active seeking work, long-term sick. Based on information, what is the percentage of the unemployed? Now, the formula for unemployed percentage, or the rate of unemployment, is unemployment rate equals to the number of unemployed divided by your labor force times 100. So, by the way, what does labor force consist of? Labor force consists of people who are employed, people who are unemployed as well, and they're actively seeking work, or part of the labor force. They're also part of the labor force, plus those people who are self-employed. They're doing their own stuff, right? So employed, self-employed, and unemployed but actively seeking work, you'll add them up. So 25 plus 5 plus 3, that would give you 33 million, and the number of unemployed people are 3. So 3 upon 33 times 100 would give you 9.1 0.09%, which makes A for alpha the correct answer. Question number 24, which says in 2018, a country had an inflation rate of 4%. The table shows inflation rate in the following years. Okay, so in which year did deflation start? ठीक है. Okay, fine. So deflation, we know what deflation basically means a fall in the general price level, right? And that happens when the inflation rate becomes negative. So it became negative in 2021. It was positive in 2019 and 20. This is such an easy question. The correct, in which year did it start? So it started in 2021, simply because the rate of inflation was minus 2%. Deflation starts in 2021. Pretty simple. 25, what is not a cause of absolute poverty? Now, absolute poverty is when you are unable to even afford basic necessities, right? So high unemployment would be wrong, because high unemployment can cause poverty, and the question is saying what is not. And not here, the word, these nots and least likely, most likely sort of questions, this is a distractor, it's a trap, right? So B is also wrong, because B it says low literacy rate. Low literacy rate reduces job opportunities and income, right? So C, and it's a cause of poverty, low literacy rate. Poor health is also wrong. It can reduce the ability to work and earn. So these are all incorrect. D is correct, state benefits, because state benefits means government payments to support the people's income, right? So they are more likely to reduce absolute poverty rather than actually causing it. So 25, David, is the correct answer. Question 26, what would usually be greater in a low income economy than in a high income economy? Now, see, a low income economy would tend to have a higher birth rate and a larger average family size, right? So that is what would make D the correct answer, because this is actually linked to lower access to. The reason why this happens is because of lower access to education and family planning, as well as, there's the fact that a huge economic importance, not importance but economic importance, I'm calling that for a reason, a huge economic importance is placed on more and more children in some households, right? So that they could sort of earn more money for the house. So again, D for David, what would usually be greater in a low income economy? The number of children in an average family. The rest of the answers are wrong. The importance of service sector, this is incorrect, because importance of service sector is usually more important in high income economies. The length of life expectancy, this is incorrect. Life expectancy is usually higher in high income economies. You do better in nutrition and healthcare. Again, high income economies tend to have high capital intensive production methods. Low income economies are generally more labor intensive, so that is incorrect. What would 27? What would be a disadvantage to a country specializing at a national level? So when a country is basically specializing in a national level, it becomes more dependent on a very small number of products or industries, right? Because it's not producing everything on its own now. It's producing only those goods and services that it could end up producing at competitive costs, right? It could end up producing those goods and services only that it could end up producing in a competitive way. So it would only specialize in those. So the downside to this is that if demand falls, or let's say the prices become too low, the price collapses for those products, the economy can be very badly affected, especially if the economy is really relying on the export of those goods. So if the prices could fall, or let's say the demand could fall, and those goods and services on which the economy has actually specialized in and trading them internationally, if the economy is too reliant on its GDP for it, then it could really damage the economy. So, for example, a country that depends heavily on oil exports may suffer significantly if the world oil prices would fall sharply, right? So what would be a disadvantage to a country specializing at a national level? The correct answer has to be C for Charlie, increased exposure to external shocks. For instance, let's say the recent war going on in the Middle East, when that caused a rise in the world oil prices, those countries exporting oil benefited. Similarly, let's reverse the situation. Let's assume that those prices were going down. The next oil exporting countries, and it's an external shock. External shock means things that are not internal within the domestic economy. So the war is an external shock. Got it? 28, which change is not associated with spread of globalization? The correct answer, globalization would involve countries becoming more connected through trade and through investment in technology and even migration. So The correct answer is C for Charlie, because more effective trade barriers would actually restrict trade and would work against globalization, while globalization talks about more open and freer trade. And the question is saying which change is not associated with the spread of globalization. So you can't really spread globalization, or you can't really encourage globalization through more trade barriers. You need to reduce trade barriers for more globalization to happen. Question number 29, which describes a fixed exchange rate system. Now, in a fixed exchange rate system, the central bank maintains the currency at a set value, relative to the other currency, or let's say relative to a basket of different currencies. So, what describes the fixed exchange? A is wrong because inflation targeting is a monetary policy objective, not the definition of fixed exchange rate. B would also be incorrect because it describes government price controls on product markets. Incorrect. C is also incorrect because it refers to stable purchasing power rather than exchange. The fact that money in the economy buys the same basket of goods is talking about price stability. D is the right answer. Okay, the value of the currency is fixed or pegged. Simply, it's also got a pegged exchange rate against another currency. Question 30, a country's balance of payment goes into a current account deficit. What is most likely to increase immediately as a consequence? Now, see, a current account deficit would mean imports are actually exceeding your exports, right? So when imports are greater than exports, then domestic firms may face lower demand because consumers are buying more foreign goods, right? So which could reduce the output, which could reduce real GDP, and it could reduce employment in the domestic industries. So if unemployment goes down, we are saying unemployment goes up. So unemployment in the domestic industry is what most likely rise. A is incorrect because economic growth is most likely to weaken rather than increase. The question is saying what is most likely to increase immediately. Economic growth will weaken. B is also wrong because current account deficit puts a downward pressure on the exchange rate rather than causing the exchange rate to rise or increase. C is incorrect as well because there is no immediate reason why the money. I mean, just because you have a current account deficit, that doesn't really make an immediate reason why the money supply must increase in the first case, right? So that's all, guys. It was a good paper. I hope you guys did well. Please do let me know your scores in the comment section, and if anything you want to discuss, you can discuss with me directly on my Instagram channel, or even you can discuss amongst each other in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. I'll see you all in the next video. I wish you all the best of your results in August, and wishing you the best for a successful journey ahead in A levels. Thank you so much.